Še enkrat lepo pozdravljeni v imenu Festivala dokumentarnega filma v Ljubljani in Društva Gibanje za ekonomsko pluralnost. Hvala, da ste prišli na projekcijo. Z veseljem bom naredila uvod v našo današnjo debato z avtorjem knjižne predložke za film. Z vami bova še moderatorja Maruša Conič in Damjan Vinter. Andrew Feinstein je v Sloveniji prvikrat, gostili smo ga že včeraj na projekciji v Cankarjevem domu, gostili ga bomo pa še jutri na dogodku na Ekonomski fakulteti v Ljubljani in sicer ob 4. uri, tako da lepo vabljeni še jutri. Andrew Feinstein je sicer ekonomist, po izobrazbi ekonomist in politolog, je nekdanji parlamentarec Južnoafriške republike in vladni svetovalec, ustanovitelj nevladne organizacije Corruption Watch v Združenem kraljestvu in avtor knjig After the Party, A Personal and Political Journey Inside the ANC in pa The Shadow World Inside the Global Arms Trade. Zgodbe, ki govorijo o sencah človeške narave in o sencah monopolizacije in akumulacije ekonomske, politične in militantne moči, ki jim mnogi ne posvečajo pozornosti in se ne ubadajo z razumevanjem globalnih ali lokalnih oboroženih konfliktov, morda potrebujejo ravno to. Ravno ta moment pozornosti, ko zavestimo, da je to del realnosti na zemlji in da se dogaja, čeprav nekatere, predvsem zahodne družbe, živijo popolnoma drugačno fikcijo in imajo privilegij si zgraditi drugačno realnost. Tema je seveda nekoliko temačna, saj gre vendarle za globalno industrijo epskih razsežnosti in edino industrijo, ki svoje profite prešteva v bilijonih in izgube v človeških življenjih. Ko nadaljujemo dialog in akcijo na področju oboroženega konflikta, sama rada predlagam, da se na konfliktno dinamiko pogleda kot na manifestacijo tako rekoč univerzalne dinamike v sodobnih družbah in da lahko konotacije najdemo celo v medosebnih odnosih in partnerstvih, in da lahko s spremembami prične prav vsaka majhna interakcija, ko se zavemo, da ima vsakdo osebno moč za udeležbo v performativnosti družbenega dialoga. S tem, ko prepustimo, da več dejanj bazira na ljubezni in širokosrčnosti, znanjem in informacijami lahko ustvarjamo drugačno okolje. Po tem uvodu mislim, da smo pripravljeni, da prisluhnemo gospodu Feinsteinu. In če se strinjate, bi jaz začela s 3 širšimi vprašanji, potem pa se lahko z dvigom roke ali s kakim drugim signalom še sami vključujete v debato oziroma postavljate vprašanja. Prvo vprašanje se bo nanašalo na dinamiko podkupovanja. In sicer vprašala ga bom, če se je tudi sam soočal s tem pri svojem delu in ali je dinamika podkupovanja zamaskirana v prakso posla kot vsakdanjega posla. Navezala se bom še na izjavo princa Bandarja o tem, da je korupcija le del človeške narave in na koncept banalnosti zla avtorice Hannah Arendt. So my first question for you would be about the bribing dynamics. Have you encountered a lot of that in your work? And would you say that the dynamics is masquerading as business as usual? In the film, we can see when Prince Bandar said that corruption is inevitable and that it is just a part of human nature. I see a nexus of 2 theories. I encountered the theory of banality of evil by Hannah Arendt, and on the other side, this complete absence of the concept of responsibility to the people and the absence of humanist categories in arms trade. And as Milton Friedman once said, the only responsibility and mission of the company is to pursue profits and to enable employment and jobs to the workers and to exist on the market. Is that the core of the whole dynamics in the arms trade? And would you say that corruption is truly at the core of human nature.
I mean, I think to say that corruption is just human nature is to suggest that we're all criminals. Because let's not forget what corruption is. It's the theft of money that belongs to citizens and to taxpayers. And I think that by just saying, oh, well, it's human nature, we can't avoid it, it's what we all do, is just a very easy way for justifying the Friedmanite neoliberal notion, which is why we have it in the film, that greed is good. That if we all pursue what is in our own immediate self-interest, the outcome will be socially good, which, frankly, I think is bullshit. And I think it's a way to justify awful behavior.
Mislim, se večina nas razume angleško, samo kratke povzetke bomo delali za tiste, ki morda ne razumete in tudi vprašanje kasneje lahko zastavite v slovenščini bomo prevedli. To se pravi, na vprašanje ali je res to, da je ta potreba oziroma želja po korupciji oziroma korupcija del človeške narave, pravi, da se ne bi strinjal s tem, da zdaj to privzamemo kot samo po sebi umevno, ker s tem upravičimo nekaj, kar je po njegovem mnenju neopravičljivo, ker zavedati se moramo, da korupcija v tem kontekstu, kot jo vidimo v filmu, gre za to, da ti ukradeš denar nekomu, družbi in ga pač uporabiš za lastne namene. In ta pravica, ki si jo posamezniki lastijo, da pač naredijo nekaj, kar se jim zljubi, ne glede na to, kdo bo plačal za to, je po njegovem mnenju čisto neopravičljiva.
And I think just very quickly to add to that, when I was privileged to serve under Nelson Mandela in South Africa's first democratic parliament, he would remind us on a weekly basis that we as MPs weren't important, that we were just there to represent the people who'd voted for us and to utilize their money not as our money, but as the money of the people. And therefore the theft of that money was theft from the people.
Andrew je bil, ne vem, če veste, pač eden izmed članov te prve vlade Južnoafriške republike in pravi, da jih je Mandela redno opominjal na to, da naj se zavedajo, da so predstavniki ljudstva, to se pravi, da ne smejo gledati na lastne koristi, ampak na to, kar ljudje, da prenašajo pač želje ljudi in isto je z denarjem, to se pravi, da ne smejo z njim razpolagati, kot da je njihov ali pa kot da je padel z neba, ampak da je to pač skupna lastnina.
And the final thing I'll just say on this is that, feeding into this sort of discourse is the idea that corruption is a victimless crime. But the reality is it's not. It is our tax money that goes to pay the bribes. The money doesn't come from nowhere. So the price of the weapons is increased by the amount of the bribes that are then fed back to our politicians. So we are all victims of corruption at one level, but at another level, the example we give in the film, in the case of the South African arms deal that I tried to investigate, we spent $10 billion on weapons at the same time that our president was saying we had no money to provide medication for 6 million people living with HIV or AIDS. And as Harvard University calculated, that led to the avoidable deaths of 365,000 South Africans over a 5-year period.
To se pravi, v bistvu hoče poudariti tudi to, da ko govorimo o korupciji, marsikdo se poslužuje tega, da je to zločin, v katerem ni žrtev. Ampak pravi, žrtve smo mi vsi oziroma mi kot davkoplačevalci zaradi tega, ker gre samo za pretok denarja, to je denar, ki ga mi vsi, ki ga družba služi, se potem preko podkupnin pretaka preko vseh, recimo v tem primeru imamo pač orožarsko industrijo, verjetno se vse to dogaja tudi v ostalih segmentih, za podkupovanje politikov in dejansko žrtev smo dejansko mi, smo individualisti, posamezniki. Poudaril pa je to, kar je prikazano tudi v filmu, da ko se je on sam lotil te preiskave, kako so bila, zakaj je toliko oboroževanja oziroma zakaj je tako visoka sredstva za oboroževanje v novo nastali Južnoafriški republiki, nikoli ni dobil odgovora na to vprašanje oziroma je oporekal dejstvo, da porabijo 10 milijard denarja, zakaj bi ga porabili za neko oboroževanje proti sovražniku, zdaj ali ga poznajo ali ne, namesto da bi s tem denarjem lahko rešili marsikater zdravstveni, socialni problem. Kot primer je dejal, da bi po študijah, ki so bile tudi potrjene izven, lahko zajezili porast AIDS-a in s tem zajezili oziroma preprečili smrt toliko in toliko žrtev, ki so pač zaradi posledic, ki vladajo v Južnoafriški republiki, zaradi zdravstvenih razmer in vsega tega. Mogoče samo že kakšno vprašanje vmes? Samo da izvoli.
Če ni možno nadzorovati pretoka denarja strani družbe.
If we cannot control the money, it's really so impossible.
It's not. If there was the political will to control it, then we would be able to. You know, if we just enforced our own national laws and international agreements like the International Arms Trade Treaty, the European Common Position on Arms Exports, if we followed those through and implemented them, it would be impossible to have this sort of corruption in arms deals. Many politicians and many officials would be in jail, but we ignore the laws.
Ni nemogoče, oziroma pravim, možno je, ampak mora obstajati politična volja, ki bi pač dovolila, da se te stvari raziščejo, da se preiskave sprožijo, da se sledi toku denarja in v tem primeru bi se pač čisto enostavno dokopali do zneskov, do končnih prejemnikov računov in po tej teoriji pravi tudi, da bi marsikateri politik se znašel v ječi.
Dodatno vprašanje. Kakšno vlogo ima tu švicarska banka, ker je večkrat tudi omenjena? In tam so neke možnosti tajnih računov, ali kaj?
I mean, I think that's an incredibly important point, is not just the Swiss banks, but the Swiss banks because of the level of secrecy, but a whole lot of other offshore jurisdictions that aren't even offshore, Luxembourg, those that are offshore, British Virgin Islands, and many others play this role, but also the very mainstream banks, like it's argued by some that the financial center of the UK, the City of London, is the money laundering capital of the world.
Je vloga švicarske banke izpostavljena, pravi, žal ni edina institucija, zdaj zakaj? Zaradi tega, ker imajo ta najvišja merila varovanja podatkov in zaradi tega se jih vsi zatekajo oziroma poslužujejo. Luksemburg je eden podoben primer oziroma pač tile Deviški otoki, pač vse te offshore otočja oziroma podjetja, banke, ki pač omogočajo podjetjem skrivanje nakazil, bomo rekli. Pravi pa, da ne samo to, tudi te uradne banke se spogledujejo s tem oziroma ponujajo podobne, bomo rekli, prikrite transakcije oziroma želijo delovati v tej smeri. Sam je imenoval tudi, da London se ga vedno bolj prijemlja neki izraz, da je tudi pralnica denarja, ker v njem banke, ki v njem domujejo in poslujejo, pač grejo po podobni poti.
Torej zdaj čisto tako pravljična hipoteza, če bi se družba odločila, da prepove tajnost računov, bi to bila ena rešitev, mogoče?
No, the secret transactions, yes. I think if we simply, you see, the problem with arms deals is that everything to do with the deal is covered by national security secrecy. And some of what happens in the deal needs to be kept confidential, obviously. But the criminality, the corruption, that shouldn't be allowed to be hidden behind national security secrecy.
Odgovor je v bistvu ja, s tem bi se dalo to rešiti, ampak problem pri teh poslih, orožarskih poslih je to, da vedno nad njimi bdi nekakšna ta agencija za nacionalno varnost, ki jo pač vsaka država ima in jo drugače poimenuje. Strinja se, da morajo biti določene stvari v pogodbah, poslovnih pogodbah, stvar poslovne tajnosti, ampak te stvari, ki se pa nanašajo ravno na podkupnine in na te bi pa morali biti transparentne in bi pa se morali odvedati.
And the very easy way to address this issue is a huge proportion of the bribes are paid through middlemen or intermediaries.
Največja količina teh podkupnin se izplačuje preko posrednikov in najenostavnejša rešitev, da se temu izognemo.
And there's no reason for these middlemen to remain secret. If in every arms deal the governments or the companies had to make public who the middlemen were, how much they were paid, and what work they did for that payment, then their role of taking the monies from the companies and passing it on to those who received the bribes would be impossible.
Če bi se tile posredniki razkrili, če bi se transparentno prikazalo preko javnega natečaja ali pa da bi imela javnost pogled v to, kdo je kandidiral in zakaj je kandidiral, to se pravi, kakšni so dejansko njegovi stroški v tem poslu, kolikšna je njegova provizija, če bi se to izognilo, potem bi se dejansko ta korupcija preprečila, ker ravno oni iz tega, ker povečujejo to ceno dejanskega proizvedenega, z njimi financirajo to podkupovanje. Okay, just my personal question. Do you miss politics? You were a politic now.
Yeah. Do you want to translate that?
Ja. Samo vprašal sem ga, če pogreša politiko, ne? Pač bil je več let, je bil tudi bil kasneje finančni svetovalec, kasnejši južnoafriški pri ostalih tega.
I get asked this question all the time, particularly when I'm back in South Africa.
To ga pogosto sprašuje, še posebej, ko pride domov v South Afriko, Južnoafriško republiko.
And I feel that I'm more involved in politics now than I ever was as a member of parliament, because I can think whatever I want to think, I can say whatever I want to say, and as long as I can show that it is factual, I can write or make films about whatever I want to. And it enables me to engage with far more people around the world on the issues that really count.
Pravzaprav se počuti, da se zdaj bolj ukvarja s politiko kot prej, ko je bil uradni politik, ker lahko pove, kar misli, lahko operira z podatki, pač seveda, kolikor so, lahko osvešča ljudi, se druži z njimi in dejansko, ja, pravi, da je zdaj nekako bolj, se mu zdi, da je zvest politiki oziroma temu osnovnemu poslanstvu politike.
Ima kdo še kakšno vprašanje? Sicer bom jaz zastavila še enega. In sicer to vprašanje se bo nanašalo na generatorje vojne. Recimo, če se spomnimo na delo Deleuza in Guattarja, ki sta govorila o War Machine. Za njih so bila v bistvu uporna gibanja, samonikla gibanja War Machine. Tu sta začela, ne? Potem recimo, če pogledamo konspirativne teorije ali pa recimo teorije Noama Chomskega, ki razvija to svojo lingvistično analitiko in govori o lažnih podobah, ki so nam prikazane preko medijev, lažnih podobah, lažni vlogi politike, da je enostavno slika, ki jo prikazujejo, napačna. Vprašala ga bom, kaj za njega v bistvu so ti generatorji vojne. Zanima me predvsem tudi, kje leži odgovornost, ali leži v politiki, v posameznikih, v nekih združbah v senci ali v ljudstvu, v podpornikih politike ali mogoče v vojakih, ki sprejmejo zaposlitveno pogodbo v vojski v bistvu sprejmejo plačo v zameno za to, da v bistvu potem na svojem delovnem mestu ubijajo. Ali sploh namen te analitike in researcha, s katerim se Andrew ukvarja, da iščemo krivca, ali naj bomo samo nevtralni opazovalci in študiramo dinamiko procesov, ki se dogajajo v trgovini z orožjem, ali sploh lahko odkrijemo, v bistvu, kdo nosi odgovornost in kakšni so deleži odgovornosti, ki jih akterji nosijo. So there have been theories on the generators of war, like for example, the war machine by Deleuze and Guattari. They're like the conspiracy theorists put most of the responsibility to the groups in the shadows. Noam Chomsky speaks of the false images that politics and media project to the public. Then how do you see that, and how do you pursue the question of where lies the responsibility? What generates the war? Are the generators of war in the politics? Are those individuals or groupings in the shadows, or the people itself, the supporters of the politics?
I think
the army men who agree on an employment contract in the military, or do you even seek responsibility, or do you just analytically approach the issue? Can we determine the shares of responsibility in different actors?
I don't think one needs to. I don't think that the issue of individual responsibility is as important as the understanding of the systemic nature of what leads to war, which is a combination of geopolitical factors, of domestic political factors, of greed and corruption of individuals and the system, if you will. I think it's understanding how those interact in a systemic way.
Bolj bistveno kot kdo je zdaj odgovoren, kdo so ti generatorji vojne, ali so to posamezniki ali politiki ali karkoli, pravi, da se mu zdi bistveno razumevanje vojne, da je vojna nek konglomerat, skupek te geopolitične situacije, domače politike, to so politike, ki jo pač vodi družbena tvorba ali država, in da pohlep, želja pomoči, po nadzorovanju drugega, in da se mu zdi bolj bistveno, da se človek fokusira oziroma se osredotoči na to.
And a crucial dimension of that is also the role of the media and entertainment.
In pri tem ima kritično vlogo ravno mediji in pa seveda ta zabavniška industrija.
And the way in which we glorify war and notions of heroism in war.
Z tem svojim pristopom, da jo poveličuje do meje nekega herojstva in ne vem kaj, v glavnem kuje v oblake.
But what this all leads to is a reality that when we have differences in the world, our first instinct now is that war is the solution to those differences. And this is reflected for me more than anything else in the reality that the United States employs more people to run one aircraft carrier than it has diplomats across the entire world. And the United States of America has 11 aircraft carriers.
To se pravi, če zdaj začnem na koncu, zaskrbljujoč je ta podatek, da ameriška vlada, oziroma Amerika pač namenja več pomembnosti, pozornosti temu, več ljudi je potrebnih za to, da vodijo eno letalno nosilko, imajo pa 11, namesto v primerjavi z vsem tem, koliko ljudi zaposlujejo, da bi se po diplomatski poti lotevali problema reševanja vojne. Yeah. So, no, the first. You started with Okay. Ja, se proščam. Maybe just one, did you see the War Dogs movie with the Jonah Hill?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Shall I tell you the real story?
yeah, please.
Okay. Because I write about it in the book. And it actually makes me extremely angry, even though I quite enjoyed the film. So the story that the film is based on, War Dogs, is that a 21-year-old American who had no experience in the defense industry and whose company was just him and a friend who used quite a lot of drugs and whose only qualification was as a masseuse. He used to give massages. He was the financial director of the company. They won a $300 million contract from the Pentagon.
To je zgodba, ne vem, koliko poznate, pač Jonah Hill in Miles Teller sta igrala Psi vojne, mislim, da je bilo prevedeno o tem, kako sta lahko dva mulca 21-letna v Ameriki preko teh javnih natečajev, ki jih sedaj more ameriška vojska izvajati za nabavo orožja, pridobila posel vreden 3 milijone, v resnici pa ni imel noben od njiju nobenih izkušenj s tem, en je bil celo tak dokaj zakajen, pa en se je ukvarjal z občasnim masiranjem, ne? Ustanovila sta firmo.
So it was for ammunition for the Afghan security forces. So they went to Albania. They bribed the Albanian defense minister and the son of the then prime minister so that the Albanian army built them a factory in a village 25 minutes outside Tirana. And at the army's own expense, they brought all of the 40-year-old Chinese ammunition from around Albania to the factory. And in the factory, they cleaned the ammunition. They filed off anything that said made in China because it's illegal for an American to trade in Chinese weaponry. And they sent this to Afghanistan.
Dobila sta posel za oskrbovanje z strelivom v zvezi z eno afganistansko navezo za posla in lotila sta se tega tako, da sta pač šla v Albanijo, sta tam podkupila oblasti, celo sina od ministrskega predsednika, če sem prav razumel, in oni so v bistvu na njihove stroške tam postavili fabriko in prepakirali oziroma na nek način so morali municijo, ki jim je preostala od prejšnjih zalog, tako zamaskirati, da ni bilo vidno, da je bila kitajskega porekla, ker je pač iz tistih virov, so oni od Kitajcev nabavili, oziroma iz ostalih virov iz tega dela sveta. To pa so morali zaradi tega, ker je Amerika imela embargo za uvoz stvari iz Kitajske, še vedno ga ima in zaradi tega nista smela prikazati, kot da je ta roba kitajska.
But then what they didn't include in the film, because they couldn't have called it a comedy if they did, was that this factory, which had no safety at all, exploded.
Aha, to se pravi, to tovarno so postavili 30 km približno od Tirane in pravi, da zdaj opozarja na eno dejstvo, ki ni bilo vključeno v filmu. Na začetku je tudi povedal, da pa seveda pozna ta film in da je sodeloval tudi, oziroma da je bil jezen, da niso vseh stvari prikazali in ena od teh stvari je ta, da je ta tovarna, v kateri so pač ta proces izvedli, ni imela nobenih varnostnih ukrepov, nobenega zavarovanja, da je eksplodirala.
And 26 people were killed.
In 26 ljudi je umrlo.
Including a 7-year-old boy who just happened to be on his bicycle cycling past the factory.
Tudi 7-letni deček, ki se je slučajno peljal na biciklu mimo kolesov.
And nobody has been prosecuted for those 26 deaths, either in Albania or in America.
Noben ni bil za to obtožen, ni odgovarjal za to, ne v Albaniji, ne v Ameriki.
So War Dogs made it out to be a whole funny experience. And the reality is that it was actually an absolutely deadly experience.
V filmu zgleda, kot da je to tako malo zabavna zadeva, ampak v realnosti je bilo pa to zelo taka smrtonosna oziroma zelo tragična epizoda oziroma, ja. Še kakšno vprašanje? Komentar, se lahko je tudi komentar k filmu, zato smo tu.
This is love. First, thanks for this movie. maybe your political career in South Africa is over, but you're now on another global mission. So I think this is quite good that your political career is now over. Okay, so we know now a lot about corruption, but I just wanted to hear how you think. It's a philosophical question. So when we will see a world without wars, when the time will come, are we ready yet?
I don't know that we ever will. I'm not a pacifist. I would like to imagine a world without war. But the reality is that the world we live in is complicated and it's unstable. But
To svoj gledalec je vprašal, če vidi prihodnost v svetu brez vojn, pa pravi, da v bistvu ne, da sicer si želi, ampak da nekako ne ve, ali bo se to zgodilo ali se ne bo, ni pacifist po osnovnem prepričanju.
The nature of the arms trade only makes the situation worse. So it ensures that because so many people make so much money from it, that war is always the preferred option to diplomacy. That peaceful options are not pursued, that often we spend billions of dollars on weaponry only because of the bribes associated with them, not because they make anybody safer or more secure.
Zdaj, to, kar je v prvem delu odgovoril, to svet je zelo kompleksen in vedno bo neka nestabilnost in ravno tu mogoče leži ta problem oziroma vzrok tega, da je težko ustaviti oziroma si zamisliti svet brez vojne, zaradi tega, ker tile sprožilci za to, da nekdo želi generirati vojno, niso samo v tem vojne, ne bijemo, ne vojskujemo vojn več zato, da bi nekoga osvobodovali, pa da bi bil nekdo bolj varen, ampak gre samo za čisti profit. To se pravi zato, ker nekdo bolj služi s tem in zato, ker se zdi na kratek rok neka ta vojaška agresija bolj primerna gesta, kot pa neka diplomacija ali pa nek konstruktivni pogovor ali pa poslušanje različnosti.
But even worse than that, we do two things. The one is we actually make the situation more dangerous and worse.
Dve stvari so še pa bolj nevarne, da sami ustvarjamo tak svet, v katerem smo še bolj ogroženi, v katerem so te situacije še bolj plodne za vse te konflikte.
And the second is to be able to justify this expenditure on all these crazy weapons. There is a whole industry dedicated to making us fearful.
In z namenom, da se upravičijo vsi ti astronomski izdatki, ne samo za izdelavo orožja, ampak tudi za podkupnine, je zadaj ena velika mašinerija vseh teh podjetij, ki nas ustrahujejo, ki nas dejansko prepričujejo, da je to potrebno.
To the extent that 43% of Americans believe that a member of their immediate family is going to die in a terrorist attack within the next 12 months.
Trenutno prepričanje je, 43% Američanov je svetu prepričanih, da bo v naslednjih letu dni, 12 mesecih nekdo od njihovih najbližjih članov umrl zaradi terorističnega napada.
Whereas, in fact, an American is far more likely to die at the hands of a toddler, a baby below the age of 5, that has got its hands on a weapon within its own home, than in a terrorist attack.
Verjetnost pa je, z dosti večjo verjetnostjo pa je, da bo ta isti otrok ali pač bilo kateri član družine, že v primeru tega otroka, pač umrl zaradi igranja z orožjem oziroma pač neke nesreče z orožjem zaradi posedovanja oziroma količine orožja, ki ga Američani posedujejo.
And why I say it makes us more dangerous is just one little example. So, the most obvious example of what is called blowback from the arms trade is what happened in Afghanistan, where the Americans poured billions of dollars worth of very sophisticated weaponry into the hands of the people who became the Taliban and Al-Qaeda.
To se pravi, v bistvu opozarja tudi na nek ta kontraučinek vsega skupaj. Če pogledamo primer Irana oziroma Afganistana, ogromne količine denarja, to se pravi količine orožja vrednega ne vem koliko milijonov, so dali v roke pač tamkajšnjim upornikom, Talibanom in ostalim.
And if that was the only example, then we could take some solace from that. But in fact, if we look at what is happening in Syria and Yemen today, the Americans are providing weapons and money to a branch of Al-Qaeda in Syria that they are actually at war with in Yemen.
To opozarja na ta paradoks, kar je tudi v filmu bil prikazan, da Amerika dejansko sofinancira oziroma financira, oskrbuje z orožjem ta iste sloje ljudi oziroma te vojaške organizacije, uporniške organizacije, ki so uradno v nasprotju z njihovimi politiko, zato z njihovo politiko financira svoje sovražnike oziroma zato, da jih dela sovražnike.
Misled the British and the world, and that then how many people have actually been convicted, when bribes and when the evidence was there. We know from the days of the Iran-Contra, the hearings there were and all of this, but what happened in the aftermath of all these big mediatized spectacles to where justice so-called prevails? How many were actually people who have been bribed or who are engaged in the activity of bribing are in prison?
Glede na to, da je napisal knjigo, ga sprašuje, koliko ljudi dejansko je bilo obtoženih oziroma je bilo dokazano to, koliko jih je bilo obsojenih za vse to, od vseh teh primerov, ki smo jih videli, pač, ki so jih bili v preiskavi.
So two pieces of information.
Dva koščka informacije.
The first is that we recorded, so this was up to mid-2011, so it's out of date now, but we recorded 502 violations of UN arms embargoes.
Zabeležili so v tem času 502 kršitvi tega vojaškega embarga.
Two of them resulted in any legal action whatsoever.
Proti dvema je dejansko bil sprožen postopek.
One resulted in a conviction.
Ena se je končala z obsodbo od 502.
If we take the period that I've been studying most closely, so let's say from the Iran-Contra period, 1980 onwards, I am aware of 3 people.
V tem času, ko on to preiskuje, to se je od tega afere kontra Iran, od 1980 je on ve za 3 ljudi, ki so bili.
Who have been convicted for corruption in arms deals, one of whom is Ricardo Privatera, who you just saw on the screen, who is in jail in Lisbon in Portugal.
En je Ricardo Privera, ki smo ga videli, je sedaj v ječi v Lizboni.
But none of the generals who he bribed or the politicians who he bribed were even charged.
Nihče od politikov, ki jih je podkupil, oziroma teh preprodajalcev z orožjem, ni bil niti obtožen, kaj šele.
And I'll give you just one more example of someone who didn't get charged, because the reality is the arms trade operates in a parallel legal universe.
Da bom še en primer nekoga, ki ni bil obsojen, morate se pa zavedati, da ti posli, orožarski posli potekajo v neke vrste vzporednem vesolju.
So South Africa's current president, a man called Jacob Zuma.
Jacob Zuma, trenutni predsednik Južnoafriške republike,
faced 783 counts of corruption, fraud, and racketeering in relation to the South African arms deal.
To se pravi, 763 postopkov oziroma je bilo sproženih v zvezi z podkupovanjem in za temi orožarskimi zadevami.
3 weeks before he was elected president,
3 tedne preden so ga izvolili za predsednika,
a prosecutor very controversially dropped all the charges against him.
so bile vse obtožbe proti njemu vržene.
3 weeks after he was elected president,
3 po tem, ko je bil izvoljen,
the prosecutor who had dropped the charges was made a high court judge.
je isti, ki je vrgel te, postal vrhovni sodnik.
Since then, Jacob Zuma and his 24 children have probably stolen somewhere between $2 and $3 billion from the South African taxpayer.
V tem času je on oziroma skupaj z družino, ki je pač kar številčna, 24, če sem prav razumel, so ukradli 2 do 3 milijone davkoplačevalskega denarja Južnoafričanov. Milijarde. Ja.
So law enforcement's working really effectively around the world.
To se pravi, ja, sodstvo deluje zelo učinkovito, tudi mislim, da imamo v Sloveniji podobne primere lahko, ne?
Maybe one more question. How do you look at the first statements of the Trump administration in this matter?
Shall I just eat
Did
the
Obama
mic-
do something or nothing? Was there
I
a
just-
difference?
Shall I just eat the microphone? Okay. So let's ignore the fact that he's a racist, that he's a misogynist. Let's just look at some of the realities. So 2 things that he's already done since he's been in office that relate to our topic. First, he's further deregulated American arms export, so he's made it even easier. So where Obama, who was no angel on these matters, suspended the sales of what are called precision-guided missiles to Saudi Arabia, who have killed over 4,000 innocent civilians in Yemen, Trump has restarted the sale of those weapons.
To je vprašanje, kakšna je sedaj, kako ocenjuje pač novo Trumpovo predsednikovanje, pravi, da okay, če pozabimo njegove osebne lastnosti in se skušamo omejiti samo na dejstva, je pač prva stvar ta, da je ukinil oziroma izničil ukaz, neke vrste odredbo, ki jo je predtem Obama podpisal s tem, da je nekako omejil prodajo ali preprečil tega orožja z vodenimi strelki, zaradi katerega je bilo preko 4,000 mrtvih v Jemenu, in on je to prepoved takoj eliminiral, tako da zdaj je to spet prosto po Prešernu.
And he has announced in his first budget that he will increase defense spending by $54 billion.
In je oznanil, da bo proračun za nacionalno varnost in za oboroževanje bo za $45 milijonov povečal. Milijard, ja.
And he will cut that amount of money from education, healthcare, social benefits, and the most extraordinary one, Meals on Wheels for the elderly, which only cost the government $3 million a year, which is what it costs the government for Donald Trump to go to his own Trump golf resort for a weekend.
Ta denar bo pa vzel seveda tako, kot je najbolj prikladno, iz teh sredstev za socialno zavarovanje, za medicino, za izobraževanje, in pa četrta stvar, kar je najbolj nekako hecno, očitno obstaja neka iniciativa za to, da delijo obroke ostarelim ljudem, in to v bistvu stane toliko, koliko stane na leto, so stroški tega toliko, koliko stane en golf vikend za gospoda Trumpa.
But before you all get completely depressed,
Preden boste postali totalno depresivni, pa
let me tell you that in the last 7 or 8 years, I've started to see so much more written about these things.
Naj vas potolažim, naj vam povem, da sem v zadnjih 7 do 8 letih opazil, da se dosti več govori oziroma piše tudi o teh stvarih.
And the fact that we managed to finance this film and that we're now traveling the world developing campaigns in most of the countries that the film's being shown in and broadcast in, including the US, where in the second half of the year, the film has been in cinemas in the US, at festivals, and will be on public television later this year. And just after it's on public television, we are starting a tour around the US, campuses, community venues, on a roadshow that we're calling Stop Trump's Wars.
Stvari se spreminjajo, eden od dokazov je tudi to, da so uspeli posneti ta film, da so ga uspeli financirati, da z njim nekako osveščajo javnost, organizirajo tudi takšne pogovore oziroma neke vrste kampanje, posod pač ko potujejo z njim, tudi v Ameriki, ne samo po festivalih, film je tudi bil deležen kinodistribucije in omenja tudi pač prav to, da bo pravo kampanjo, ki so jo poimenovali Stop Trump.
Stop Trump's Wars.
Ja, to se ustavite Trumpove vojne.
Hey, I'm more interested in your experience as a member of parliament with corruption practice. What kind of role did you have at the moment, and what kind of pressure were you put on? And maybe do you have colleagues from parliament who took a different path than you?
So my responsibility when I was a member of parliament, because there were very few of us in the ANC when we became a democracy in 1994 who had any experience in economics and finance, I drafted all of the financial management legislation for the public sector.
To se pravi, v času, ko je bil član Afriškega nacionalnega kongresa, je bilo sorazmerno malo članov in če sem prav razumel, v bistvu se je trudil, da so nekako ne uzakonili, ampak pač napisali neka pravila proti temu.
And then after that had been done, I ran the main financial oversight committee that looked at the spending of the government in the previous year.
In potem je v bistvu on predsedoval, oziroma vodil je pač neke vrste komisijo, ki je nadzorovala, ki je poskušala nadzorovati oziroma bdeti nad temi finančnimi transakcijami, ki so se vršile znotraj pač teh državnih krogov.
And when this arms deal report came to us from our Auditor General, I'm not sure what the equivalent is.
Okay, one of the military guys.
No, he's the
chief,
like the auditor, the accountant for government, for all of the government departments.
Aha, računsko sodišče. Aha. To se pravi, ko so pač dobili prvi signal, da pač najprej gledajo, da je nekaj narobe z strani računskega sodišča.
When my committee started investigating the deal, a whole lot of people in my own party tried various ways to persuade me to stop the investigation.
To so njegovi kolegi, pač politični, ti so ga skušali odvrniti od tega, prepričati, da naj opusti to preiskavo.
And I ignored them and carried on with the investigation by my committee.
Je nadaljeval sam s svojo komisijo.
And eventually I was called to the presidency.
In je bil seveda poklican na zagovor pred predsednika oziroma.
And I was told, you have a choice.
Pred odbor predsedniški in smo pač dali vedeti, da ima izbiro.
You can stop this investigation.
Lahko ustaviš preiskavo.
And you will become the youngest cabinet minister in our country's history.
In postal boš najmlajši predsednik kabineta v Južnoafriški republiki.
Or you can try and continue the investigation.
Ali pa rineš dalje.
And we will throw you out of parliament.
In te bomo vrgli iz parlamenta.
But there was still almost 3 months before they could legally throw me out of parliament.
Ampak imel je še 3 mesece časa, preden so ga lahko uradno, ker je pač očitno 3-mesečni rok, vrgli ven.
So for 3 months I'd have to go into parliament every day, and as I walked past my colleagues in the ANC members of parliament, as I walked past, they would all shout, traitor, traitor, traitor.
In ti 3 meseci, ko je bil še član tega in je vsak dan se srečeval z njimi, so bili pravi zelo tak moreči, ker so njegovi kolegi, ki so ga vsak dan videvali, pač ga zmerjali na nek način z izdajalcem.
I also had to be placed under protective surveillance.
Morali so ga tudi zaščititi posebej, oziroma so ga nadzorovali.
So there was a guard, a security guard with me all the time outside my office, outside my house, and when I went, I used to go to Parliament on a little scooter, a Vespa, and these two guys would come and they would poke their mirrors under my Vespa before I got on it.
Zaradi njegove varnosti je imel vedno pač nekega shadowmana, pač nekega varnostnika zraven, pravi, da hecno je bilo to, ker on se je ponavadi odpravljal na delo v parlament z skuterjem oziroma z Vespo in ta dva sta potem reveža vsak dan morala z ogledalci pregledovati, če ni kaj podtaknjeno, če mu niso kaj prerezali, da ne bi.
But at the same time they were also bugging my house and my car and my office.
Seveda, istočasno so pa dali en kup prisluškovalnih naprav tako v njegovo domače stanovanje, v njegovo pisarno, kot tudi v njegov avto.
So I could have stayed in government.
Lahko bi ostal v vladi.
But it would have been on the basis that every time any of my colleagues or anyone else in government was involved in any corruption, I would have to keep quiet about it because I had refused to investigate the biggest corruption scandal in our country's history.
Lahko bi torej ostal v vladi, ampak samo pod tem pogojem, da bi moral zamežati oko vedno, ko bi kdo od njegovih kolegov pač naredil kaj takega, se pustil podkupiti, ker pač ne bi smel ker je moral obljubiti, da bi v tem primeru pač ovrgel preiskavo, oziroma da je ne bi na novo načel.
Of the 263 members of parliament that the ANC had at that time,
od 263 članov, ki jih je ta afriški nacionalni svet imel v tistem času,
I had the support privately, they never said publicly, but privately I had the support of 2 people.
Samo 2 sta ga podprla, ampak to noben uradno, ampak samo tako na 4 oči.
So you moved out of South Africa actually because you were in danger, like.
There were 2 things really. I didn't think that the threats against me were really serious. I didn't think anybody was going to kill me.
Zakaj zapustil je bilo vprašanje Južnoafriško republiko, pravi, da ni imel nekih dejanskih konkretnih groženj, da bi ga želeli umoriti ali mu groziti.
But nobody would give me a job in South Africa after this because I'd had such a public disagreement with the president. And that might just be because I only have 5 degrees.
In po vsem tem, kljub njegovim 5 diplomam, ki jih imam, noben ni mogel ponuditi službe in pač verjetno tudi mu ni preostalo drugega hoditi.
So I actually had to leave the country, first of all, to earn a living, and then second of all, because my first book was about that deal and the way it impacted South Africa, and I wanted to write that outside of South Africa.
Prvi razlog je bil ta ekonomski, ker pač ni mogel več preživeti, drugi razlog je pa ta pač, da je pisal knjigo in je bil trdno odločen, da jo napiše nekaj ven, da se pač odmakne malo od tega.
Yeah, in the movie you show both sides of politicians or lobbyists that are involved in corruption from the side of countries that are selling weapons and also from countries that are buying weapons. And there is, as you suggest, that countries that are purchasing weapons are not only doing that because they would want to buy the weapons and corruption happens because they are in that process, but the officials there or the people in charge see an opportunity in enriching themselves by buying weapons. So, as you know, they would purchase the weapons precisely for the reason because this gives them a chance to enrich themselves. So, then I would have 2 questions. One is, if you look at different countries that have been involved in arms deals and where there was corruption, are the countries where the power is more concentrated, are the corruption charges there larger, the corruption amounts, or in countries where there are more officials involved? So, and I would expect that where you have more people involved,
corruption amounts would be larger than in countries where everything is run by a small group or a dictator who is eventually also paying for the weapons and perhaps has another means of extracting wealth from the country. So that would be the first question. And the second would be if, suppose that pharmaceuticals would also be willing to pay high bribes to ministers of health and officials. Would, in that case, would there some governments prefer to invest more into healthcare because they would see that as a chance to enrich themselves?
Okay, first question.
Let me answer the second question first. And that is that I wish that were the case. Then we'd have an easy solution. And we could just ensure that big bribes were paid on all the socially beneficial industries.
Gledalec je izpostavil to zanimivo dilemo, to se pravi, če bi se zdaj podoben vzorec teh orožarskih podkupnin preslikal na farmacevtsko industrijo, ali to pomeni, da bi potem vlade v želji, da bi prodale čim več tega, tudi več vložile v tole zdravstveno varstvo, ampak pravi, da to si samo želimo?
But seriously, it's a really good question. It's not really the concentration of numbers because in all countries that purchase weapons, and the United States purchase more weapons than most of the rest of the world combined. There just tend to be, because of the technical nature of weaponry, but also because of the national security dimension, there tend only to be very small numbers of people with appropriate national security clearance. So there always tend to be very small numbers of people involved in the decision-making process, whether the country is a dictatorship or a democracy. What determines more the scale of the bribes tends to be the relative wealth of the country.
To se pravi, na vprašanje tem, kakšna je povezava med koncentracijo ali so podkupnine večje tam, ker je manj politikov oziroma pač vseh teh ljudi vpletene ali kontra, pravi, da ni toliko odvisno od tega. Tipičen primer za to je Amerika, ki je sicer po tehnični plati tudi nek gigant, kar se tiče proizvodnje orožja, ampak v resnici je zelo malo ljudi vpletenih samo v to, ampak to je bolj odvisno od tega, koliko ljudi vpletenih je, kakšna je bogatstvo oziroma neka denarna moč države, kateri se prodaja ali iz katere pač kupujejo orožje.
And the reason for that's very simple. You do have to pay for the weapons to get the bribery dimension going.
Formula je enostavna, to se pravi, moraš pač si nekako pokriti to oziroma plačati za tisti državi, ki hočeš prodati, zaradi tega, da podkupnine laufajo.
Because the bribes are added on to the purchase price.
Ker te podkupnine so dodane, so vezane na vrednost produkta, ki ga prodajaš ali kupuješ.
So Saudi Arabia can buy $40 billion of weapons. Tanzania can only buy $50 million of weapons.
Saudska Arabija lahko za 40 milijard nakupi, ena manjša država za 15 milijonov samo in od tega se odvisno tudi, kje boš več zaslužil.
But the key point I want you to bear in mind is the sort of discourse we use when talking about corruption.
Želel bi samo opozoriti na to, kar se moramo vedno zavedati, ko govorimo o podkupninah.
So most measures of corruption will say that the most corrupt countries on the planet are, African countries, South Asian countries, Latin American countries, some Balkan countries.
Statistike pravijo, da je največ korupcije pač v teh nekih nerazvitih državah, to se pravi Balkan, Afrika, Latinska Amerika.
But on the South African arms deal, for instance, $300 million of bribes were paid. But the same companies that paid $300 million of bribes in South Africa were paying similar amounts and bigger and smaller to a whole lot of countries all over the world. And it's those companies and those countries led by their leaders, as we saw in the film, who promote these deals. They are actually the most corrupt countries. So it's the British and the French and the German and the Italians and the Americans and the Russians who are actually spreading this corruption around the world, because if they weren't paying the bribes, the other countries wouldn't be labeled as so corrupt.
Na primeru te Južnoafriške republike še enkrat pravi, da šlo je za pritok nekje 300 milijonov vrednega posla, približno isti denar se je razparceliral, če rečemo temu, razdelil preko podkupnin, ampak težko je zdaj reči, mislim, kdo je zdaj kriv za te podkupnine, pravzaprav so te države, ki se jih nikoli ne omenja, vsi ti, ki smo jih videli tudi v filmu, politiki in tisti, ki so pripomogli, da je ta posel sploh nastal, to se pravi Francija, Amerika, Anglija, evropske države, Italija.
So while Jacob Zuma actually took a very small amount of money, R500,000 a year for a few years.
Ta Jacob Zuma je vzel samo recimo $500,000 v nekaj letih si je prislužil profita.
BAE Systems, the company that paid him the money, in that same period of time, paid somewhere between 1.5 and 3 billion British pounds of bribes to various politicians around the world.
Ta kompanija BAE, ki je pač v bistvu proizvajalec tega bila, je pa v bistvu v vseh teh letih 1,5 milijarde funtov razdelila oziroma plačala politikom za podkupnine.
But Jacob Zuma at least faced his 783 charges, even if the charges were dropped before he came to trial.
On je vse bil soočen z temi 700 ne vem kolikimi obtožbami, čeprav so jih uvrgli. Ja.
BAE Systems have never had one charge placed against them.
Ta kompanija proti njej ni bilo vložena nobena ta prijava. Tako da. Ok, zdaj pa moramo zaključiti, ker je naslednja projekcija. We have to finish the discussion. I don't know if you're available in the lobby, so if anyone has interested, you can continue. Če se kdo želi še pogovarjati z Andrewom, bo na voljo v kavarni. Drugače pa se zahvaljiva, ne? Hvala za...
Najlepša hvala za obisk.
Tako. Thank you, Andrew.